Good evening. The Charter Township of Plymouth Board of Trustees special study session for Tuesday, September 17th, 2019 will come to order. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Heitman.
Here.
Trustee Dempsey.
Present.
Clerk Borba here. Trustee Dorshevitz.
Here.
Trustee Kermy.
Here.
Treasurer Clinton.
Here.
Supervisor Heisler.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum.
Next, we have item B, approval of the agenda. Comments or questions? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Mr. Heitman.
I move we approve the agenda as written.
Motion's made by Trustee Heitman. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Dempsey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Welcome to Plymouth Township Hall, the safest place in town tonight, I think, by far. We are here for a very special occasion, and that is the elevation in rank to Sergeant for Steve Coppell. And Chief Teddington, if you want to come forward, along with Lieutenant Brothers, Lieutenant Kudra. And Chief, why don't you just say a few words and tell us a little bit about our new sergeant here.
Well, first of all, thank everybody. Thank you for all for coming tonight. And I think, Steve, I'm going to ask you to introduce your family members. You have half of Plymouth here, so why don't you go ahead enough to get you reelected right here on the side.
My parents, John and Fran, my wife, Tara, my two daughters, Gabrielle, Mackenzie, my father and mother-in-law, Don and Joel, my brother-in-law, Adam, and Uncle Bonnie and David, and Grandma Wolf.
Thank you for coming this evening. Also want to acknowledge one of our former sergeants, Sergeant Todd Sapinko. In order for Steve to get promoted, Todd had to leave and create the vacancy. But he didn't go far. He's only about 2 miles north, working, I think was your first day at Northville Township? Yesterday. So he's still in the immediate area, and we're thankful for that. So as far as Steve goes, with all of the new officers we have in the department, Sergeant Coppell is a critical part of our team. He's calm in everything that he does, even in the most stressful situations. And the officers, especially the new officers, really look at Steve as a role model. To demonstrate how calm he is, last year he received the department's life-saving award for an incident that occurred. And I'll just kind of briefly read the summary. The department would like to recognize Officer Coppell and Officer Rupart for actions performing resulting in saving of a life. Both officers responded to a call of a suicidal female stabbing herself in the garage at her residence. When officers approached the female, she refused to put the knife down and continued to stab herself. Officers were able to disarm the female and apply pressure to her wounds, which were bleeding heavily. Fire department personnel arrived and transported her to the hospital, where she was found to have several stab wounds to her neck and stomach. The hospital was able to perform medical treatment necessary to save her life. And for that, at the time, Officer Coppell received the life-saving award. So, everybody that comes across Sergeant Coppell likes him. Here's another letter, and you look in his personnel file, and it's filled with letters. But even the people that he arrests like him. Dear Officer Coppell, hi, my name is Mike, and I'm an alcoholic. First of all, I want to thank you for doing your job on April 11th at 1:05 a.m. and arresting me for drunk driving. Thank God I didn't kill anyone or injure myself. The guilt and shame from this incident has changed my life forever. I have joined AA and have a sponsor. He's a very motivated person. I know this is where I need to be. Again, thank you, and God bless you. And again, that's for somebody that Steve arrested. Steve was hired here at Plymouth Township in August 26, 1994, and just completed 25 years. He has a bachelor's degree from Madonna University, and he lives in the community with his wife and his Tara and his 2 daughters. I'd like to ask them to come up at this point. Tara, bring the girls up. Who's going to? Girls, come on up. You want to pin? Who's going to pin this on their dad? Who wants to do this? Your mom?
folks, you're certainly welcome to stay if you want to. You want to witness all the action of a study session. But,
We have to see if he's still in the budget.
okay.
Another one of your usual meetings.
Yeah. We know how to clear a room, huh? Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to item C1. This is the proposed paramedic ambulance services agreement with Huron Valley Ambulance. Tonight, we have representatives here from HVA, and also Chief Phillips is on hand as well. If we can maybe close the door there, that'd be great. I don't want to interrupt the festivities here. Okay. So this particular draft document has been in your possession in various forms over the last several weeks, and this represents the latest iteration of the agreement. Since our last meeting on this issue, which I think was back in June, myself and Chief Phillips have had several meetings with HVA representatives, both in person and via email, regarding this agreement. This agreement establishes a new emergency response protocol that puts public safety first, allowing for transport based on a first-to-arrive principle and the patient's medical condition. It also limits our EMS staff to transporting within a defined service area. Residents also have the ability to request HVA and have private agreements with them for personal transport. This agreement finally lays out a professional, modern agreement relationship with HVA and addresses each side's responsibilities and obligations. We also have, for the first time, substantial reporting requirements from HVA that we can use to measure progress, responsiveness, and licensing status for their EMS responders. Most importantly, it provides comprehensive insurance, liability, and indemnification requirements that we desperately need. Our attorney has provided us with a written opinion tonight on this item and has urged us to have a written contract to protect our taxpayers in the event of a liability situation. I've provided you with a summary of the contract highlights. We can go through them if you want. Otherwise, well, let me zip through them real quick here. Section 2, scope of services. HVA will maintain and update license documentation as required by the state. They will also maintain a voluntary transport subscription program. Right now, there's about 17 residents who have that service with HVA, and if more people want that, they can certainly get that.
What is it?
Well, let's get to that. We'll get to that. Township also reserves the right to implement EMD service under this agreement, which we do not plan on doing at this time, but we do have that in there. Payment for services, any increase in HVA rates above 5% must be approved by the board. Section 4 is annual report. They have to provide a report to the township, including number of runs made and the licensing level of each employee who responded to the runs. We don't need their names. We just want to know what their licensing background status is. This is a 2-year contract, and all insurance provisions have been drafted and approved by both township attorney and Craig Manser from IBEX, which is our underwriter for the MMRMA. Most everything else here is boilerplate language. Moving on to Exhibit A, that is the operating plan, which is the EMS protocol. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, in the event of a 911 emergency call, both Plymouth Township EMS and HVA shall be dispatched by Plymouth Township dispatchers. They will both respond immediately with their current location and time of arrival. We have also, as a result of these discussions, this is not really in the contract, but throughout these discussions, we have also established what I call more of a direct line of communication, physical line of communication between Plymouth Township Dispatch and HVA. We've toured, several of us have toured our dispatch facilities here. I know our dispatchers have told me that they like the service. It's a more of a, I just call it more of a direct line between our folks and your folks. So their communication level is much better than it was even a few months ago. So that's a big improvement. Basically the townships will transport patients in one of the following circumstances, and that would be, I want to get to the new agreement on that one. Township ambulances shall transport patients in one of the following circumstances: when HVA is unable to respond in a timely manner, when the patient's condition will deteriorate due to a delay in transport. This determination is made after the patient is clinically assessed on scene. In such cases, the township will attempt to determine HVA's estimated time of arrival before beginning patient transport. When requested by HVA personnel on the scene, or by request of HVA's dispatch center, or at the request of the patient. And then destination of patient, we've retained some of the original language from the first proposal, which is that the fire chief will from time to time create either a list or a map that will lay out the areas to which we will not transport, so that those areas or hospitals will be handled by HVA, and then we would be responsible for the areas that are closer to home, or we would be limited to those areas that would be closer to home. So at this point, I'd like Chief Phillips to come up, or if you can handle it at the desk, that's fine too. Basically, we also have representatives here from HVA. We're just here to answer any questions that you might have or comments. So I'll open it up to the board.
What is the new procedure that you were referring to, the new line of communication? How is it different?
We worked with HVA to install direct radio communication in their rigs so that they can speak directly to our dispatch center by radio. We've had a modified version of that, but we cleaned up the procedure so that crews can hear each other on scene and speak directly to each other if it's necessary.
When did you implement this?
July 4th? 1st? It was 1st.
So, Chief, is it safe to assume that you support this contract?
Yes, I support this contract.
I wonder if we could have the HVA folks answer some questions.
Sure. You want to come forward? And we just need your name and title with HVA.
Good evening. I'm Ron Slegel. I'm the president and CEO for HVA.
And you have somebody familiar with you.
Yes, Andrew Savage, our vice president here.
I seem to notice him at every meeting, whether we have a rank promotion or not. He's here.
Yes.
So as I recall, when you've appeared before, you have said HVA supports the idea of a written contract. Is that still true?
That's correct.
I have a couple of questions about the agreement itself, if you have it in front of you.
I don't, but I can get it there.
So I don't know if you have your own copy or the board copy, but on page 2 of the agreement, there's a section G about a voluntary membership subscription program.
Yes.
Could you describe what that is?
Yes, this is an ambulance membership program where it helps the patient, should they need ambulance service, to avoid out-of-pocket expenses. So as many of you know, health insurance doesn't cover all your bills. So this is an opportunity for families to pay an annual amount. It happens to be $42 for them, their spouse, and any dependent children. Should they have a medical need for an ambulance service, we would bill their insurance, but then what the insurance doesn't cover, their deductible, their co-pays, is covered by having this membership. So it really provides an opportunity for people to avoid out-of-pocket expenses by prepaying this membership program.
So you would not be able to withdraw this program under this contract, right? Because it says you shall provide it for the period of time of the agreement. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. They provide it currently.
Right.
Do they have to keep it? What he's saying is, can they withdraw from it? We don't care if they withdraw, right? That's their
No, I mean,
decision.
if you want to make that permissive, Jack, if that's your,
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what the language is and whether you're behind it, disagree with it.
Yeah,
it says you shall
it
provide.
says shall.
So,
Yeah.
We don't have any, we've had that program for several decades and have no intent of changing it, so I have no concern with that language.
Okay. Well, this would probably lock you in for the term of the agreement to provide something like this.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
So under this scenario where people have prepaid and are expecting you to take them to the hospital because it's going to be cost savings, and then our ambulance gets there first and they want to go to the hospital, how is that amount of money reconciled, or what happens in that situation?
So if, I guess we haven't encountered that time when there is a conflict. Normally, if we cannot respond, then that membership still covers that patient. So the only time that I can see that could be a potential conflict would be if the patient, the fire department had to transport prior to us getting there.
So, but they're paying for the service, and what's the difference in the cost that you charge and what the township would charge? How is that going to be covered when they've already paid for that service?
Right. So if the township fire department would transport, they would bill that their amount.
To the insurance company and to the patient.
That's
And
the
then
rate
patient will
regardless?
submit the claim to HVA.
Yeah, then we'd have to look at doing that, have the patient cover any balance that the fire department bill was not paid for.
So what their-
HVA would cover that.
So that actual instance had not come up.
You've never seen that happen.
But it could under this scenario.
Yeah,
This
it could.
scenario is
Well,
a higher probability.
If I
But-
may
but-
break in, the fire department's rates are much lower than HVA's, so the patient would be paying a lower rate if we were to transport.
But what if your rate is more than the insurance? What if there's something not covered by the insurance? Then does HVA pay that for the patient?
In that case, our rates are covered under insurance, especially private insurance. It would only be in the instances of Medicare, and we are required by law to accept the Medicare rate, so that wouldn't make a difference. Medicare rate is what gets paid. We can't go above what Medicare pays, and if a private insurer, they would have to just pay their own deductible with their private insurer that they already have.
Just to go further, if I may, excuse me, is what if when you're doing all the things you do for a patient, you have to do all kinds of extra things. You have to give injections, you have to give drugs, you have to do all kinds of things for that person to get them safely to the hospital. And those charges exceed, are you going to cover those?
So unfortunately, as the chief will also attest, no matter how many medicines, skills, and everything we do,
Okay, I'm just,
it's a standard base rate. So we
Flat
don't,
fee.
unlike a hospital, we don't get to
Okay.
add additional charges on. So they pay the base rate, that's all they pay.
okay.
So you don't see any opportunity for your subscription people to ever have to pay anything to either one of you?
I believe that's correct. I mean, we only have several dozen members, and this really only primarily applies to more with people who have commercial insurance, and then because HVA is doing the majority of the transports, the likelihood of this would be low, and we can resolve anything that doesn't.
Do you
occur.
market this program?
We do.
for the 17 people in the township that currently have this service, are they using it as a safety net for an acute, serious medical emergency, or are they using it for medical transport in a non-life-threatening situation? What's your customer look like?
So actually, it could be either of those scenarios. So for instance, if they are routinely going for some type of treatment because they have a chronic medical condition, that they would have a lot of small out-of-pocket bills. That could be the case. But in many of the cases, as you described initially, it's just kind of that safety net, as that people just feel they don't want to have that extra burden of a bill that they don't have money for.
Okay.
And that applies to, they use that for transfers as well?
That's correct.
So how do you publicize that? Frankly, I never heard of it.
Yeah, so we've really not done a tremendous amount of marketing on that, but it's been primarily it's people who are in and out of medical facilities frequently that are made aware of that through their social worker or those kind of things.
Through the caseworker?
Caseworker, yes.
That's helpful. Could we turn then to page 3 of the agreement, section 4? I have a couple questions here.
Sure.
So the second sentence says, the report shall include runs made. I mean, that could be something as simple as 32. But is there more information involved in the idea of reporting on runs made, like time involved and situations? Or
Yeah,
just
types of calls, those kind of things. We didn't really specify all the things in that, but it's an annual report, so we're really not going to be looking for two data points. It will be substantial information that we'll provide, including those things.
There is some things that we don't want to have included that is protected under the HIPAA laws, though. For example, patient names, stuff like that. And typically we will have the cause of the injury broken down into several categories. We won't list it in great detail.
Okay, I did notice then this would be an annual report. Over on Exhibit A, page 7, there's a quarterly report required. Am I right about that?
I'd like to answer that. Yes, you are correct. The annual report is due to the Board of Trustees. The quarterly report is due to the fire chief, in which then I will review what's going on and then make my report to the board.
Oh, okay. So
Does it say that in here to the fire chief?
I believe it does, because that's under the operating agreement.
So we can expect
Quarterly reports in writing shall be provided to the township fire chief.
so we can expect to be able to get information from you on a quarterly basis.
Correct.
We don't really need to amend the agreement then, because you're going to be, okay.
And guys, under section 4, I think what we should do under A, well, that's all there is. The report shall include, why don't we put number of runs made? Because runs made is kind of a sloppy way of saying it. Okay.
Okay, then my last question really has to do with, back on page 7, Exhibit A, under the emergency response times paragraph.
Which section? Right here?
Yeah, it's page 15 of the packet. So maybe you could just take us through what this really involves, because I see the words, but I'm not exactly sure I understand what this is.
Specifically, emergency response times. Okay. So what the first line of it says for everyone is HVA will provide a response to medical emergency calls which meets NFPA 1710 standards. The NFPA 1710 book is very thick. We would not want to include that all in this document. So the very next line says what we specifically expect, and that's the NFPA standard is agreed to be 10 minutes from the time HVA receives the call from Plymouth Township. What this does is this bakes in notification time from the dispatch center. It bakes in the turnout time for the HVA paramedics to get in their ambulance, turn it on, and start heading towards the run, and the travel time that the standard represents for an advanced life support unit. That's those times baked together, which equals 10 minutes.
Okay, can you move on to the third sentence? What does that mean?
Certainly can. If HVA is likely to be unable to respond in the established time, they shall notify the Plymouth Township Communications Center immediately. So the idea there is that if HVA knows that they can't make it on time, they have a unit coming from downtown Ann Arbor or Saline, very far away, they can notify us, and then our personnel will immediately know that they're not waiting for an ambulance 5 to 6 to 7 minutes later, and they can begin treatment and transport at that point in time.
Does this involve an HVA saying where their ambulance is?
Yes, we've included that in
Okay.
the agreement, correct.
Yeah, and that is also in this document, is they are supposed to give us their ETA and their location when they have it.
And then if we cannot respond, Plymouth Township cannot respond, after HVA cannot respond, then we go to mutual aid?
That is correct. We would call mutual aid.
Jack, anything else?
So what projection of runs will Township transport under this plan, and what is the current running rate of transport by Plymouth Township today?
I would not foresee, right now, looking at our last few reports, we're looking at the township's running just under 20% of runs that we transport. I would expect it to stay the same with as long as all factors today stay the same. If HVA has hiring issues or there's other issues that we haven't foreseen, that could change. We all know that hiring paramedics is a very difficult thing at the moment. So that could change it in the future, but I would not expect this to immediately change it or make it any different.
So several months ago, you and the supervisor came forward seeking 100% transport.
That's correct.
What has changed, and how do you feel about this?
Well,
Because this is status quo.
no, I will answer that question. I think we listened to the board at our last meeting.
Okay.
I mean, we got a lot of feedback at the meeting. We got feedback individually afterwards, and this agreement is, I believe, a compromise. Not everybody got everything that they were looking for. That includes fire, myself, police, dispatch, and HVA. And so it's a good, fair agreement that I think everybody can live with, but it sets forth the operating protocols, the response protocols, and again, most importantly, enshrines this in a legally binding written agreement that deals with the insurance issues.
So the 2020 budget, you've made no adjustment for this contract?
Well, we have, but obviously that's a draft budget, and we can review that as necessary.
So are you anticipating the same revenue, that you put in the same revenue assumption?
I don't believe so.
No, we're anticipating fire transports to finish at 140,000 this year, and we bumped it up to 200,000 next year.
That's a pretty big percentage change.
I believe
Not
the chief might be a little bit optimistic in the amount of runs we make versus HVA based on the numbers I've seen in the last year. I think it's probably closer to 85 or 90% that HVA is making, and we get 10 to 15%. 20% is a good number, fine. And that's probably what
So it's not
number
a
was
collection
close.
improvement?
Yeah.
So you're not better collecting, that's not part of the $60,000 increase?
No,
It's almost, it's about 40% increase is what you put.
I think it represents an increase in runs.
Increase in runs that we invoice for.
Correct.
Okay. And the
And
staffing is adequate without asking for more firemen?
That's correct.
Okay, so you can do it within that box.
Yes, sir. We've always wanted the number of firefighters that we currently have, and that's the number that we've been asking for 3 years, and we have it now.
All right. Why, the 5% increase, how did you come about with that number for the rate that HVA charges?
In the original document, the original request for proposal that put out, we had required that the agencies that were bidding, like HVA and Community, that any increase would require them to come to the Board of Trustees for a approval. In the proposal made by HVA, they had requested any increase over 5%. During the course of drafting the contract, we agreed to that language to bring to the board.
Okay. Since we've had this company without a contract for over 30 years, why is it only a short 2-year contract?
Because we want to see how this arrangement works. This is a very, the EMS ambulance business right now in Southeast Michigan is very competitive. And I think we can acknowledge that you're not the only provider. We have other providers. We have new providers even coming online now. And it's a very competitive market. So we want to have a contract that we can examine over the next 2 years, see if it works or not, see if it needs to be amended.
So if it's that competitive, how could anyone start up if you can't hire employees? So there seems to be a
Well, because they're backed up. What's happening is that in this business right now, we have new ambulance companies that are coming online that are backed up by the major hospitals, Beaumont, Henry Ford, you name it. They're all bankrolling ambulance services because that's your intake. That's the patients that you pick up tend to be the patients that you keep.
So I think 2 years is too short. How different is this contract versus what you have with the city of Plymouth? What are the major differences, if any?
So being the new guy relatively, Andy, do you have any comments on that?
Because they've been working with you with a contract for a long time.
Most of our contracts are for a specific period of time, but then they auto-renewal with the termination clause of 180 days. But they auto-renewal until somebody says, we don't want it anymore.
We don't have that provision in here. This is non-automatic. So I'm concerned about the shortness and the
I share that concern.
and the investment and what the planning horizon for HVA and us, of course, but it just seems like it should be longer.
I would respectfully disagree. I think we could go with a one-year contract, and if your performance is up to snuff, we could then enter into another 1 year or 2 year or longer. But this is a new deal, a new agreement. We've never had a written agreement, so I could see how a one-year agreement would be sustainable. My
So what
personal opinion.
happens were you finished?
Yeah, just my personal opinion.
What happens at the end of the 2-year contract? So it expires, it does not go month to month. At that point, do you continue to do, what if the next board just doesn't act? Because this will extend beyond this current board. What if the next board just doesn't act? Then what happens?
Yeah, we don't want a gap. It's a good question.
So from HVA's perspective, and I'm sure others have that as well, we've served this community for over 20 years without a contract. We prefer to have a contract, but we operate in some communities where there isn't a contract as well. So our intent would be if for some reason that didn't continue on, that we would still provide the service. We'd prefer to have the contract for everybody's best interest.
Yeah, I believe that it would be our fiduciary and moral responsibility to make sure the public health and safety is protected. And I think it would be grossly negligent for us to have a delay in that. I think it's incumbent upon us to continue working with you to either extend the service or we go out for bids for see who else is out there.
So what the destination of patients? What are the hospitals that are on that list currently?
Currently, it's 25 miles from the center of Plymouth Township. Providence Park Novi, St. Mary's Hospital, University of Michigan, St. Joe's Hospital, Garden City Hospital, Henry Ford West Bloomfield is within that ring, Annapolis.
That's a lot within 25 miles.
That's it. A lot of those are historically we've always gone to. Anything outside that ring is no longer emergency care. And we don't want, that's not the business the fire department's in. We're in emergency care. We don't want to take people to Royal Oak, Beaumont, or Beaumont, Troy. So that's where the private ambulance would always take patients.
And then how do these rates compare to our rates?
These rates are higher than our current rates right now, the fire department rates that we approved 2 years ago. And traditionally, fire departments are generally under private ambulance. because we're backed up by tax dollars. Their rates are a little bit higher than Community and Beaumont when they did the RFP.
I do believe, and I did recommend in one of my documents that I think we do need to take a fresh look at our rate structure as well, because we are lower than what HVA is charging currently. And I don't know enough about the business, but you're basically, you have to stay within certain parameters that are established by the federal government, correct?
That's correct. As Chief Phillips mentioned, Medicare, we have to accept whatever they pay. It's well below both of our rates. Medicaid is the same thing, which is even lower. So really, and if we accept Blue Cross Blue Shield, which we both do, that's already combined. So it's really only unfortunately, the handful of individuals who have commercial insurance that still pay the full bill, and that's diminishing more and more.
What's the impact of no-fault reform having on your industry right now?
So a lot of that's still yet to be determined. From the good news is from the emergency ambulance side, emergency ambulance is exempted from the fee schedule that was put in place for no fault.
So from an operational standpoint and coverage, you know where all your rigs are at any given time, because
Correct.
How do you know where all your rigs are at any given time?
So the ambulances have GPS, and so the dispatch center sees.
So the dispatch center can see that on a map?
Yes, correct.
And then what happens when a rig leaves the area? Do you backfill?
Then yes, then we redeploy other ambulances in the region to come backfill.
Bob, could you scroll down to the operating procedures?
Sure.
Or maybe it's up.
Oh, what page, Mark?
Is that 15 to 21?
If you could scroll down a little bit. I'm looking for the conditions that
further.
Plymouth Township would transport. Here we go.
Oh, okay.
Chief Phillips, would you mind giving me your interpretation of number 1, when HVA ambulances are unable to respond in a timely manner? Just give me a practical example of that.
My practical example of that would be in the established response time, the NFPA response time that we set forth earlier in the document of 10 minutes, would be unable to respond in a timely manner in the strictest sense. Now, with that being said, the second line in that would also play a big portion of that. We didn't want to limit ourselves with, well, you have to have this specific set of rules that you have to hit every single one of them, so we broke it down in individual. But if you had a non-priority patient and HVA was a minute out, we would probably wait. I think most of our staff would wait.
Since you're talking about this, how do you avoid the situation where you're going to have hyper-competitiveness, which, 100 years ago in fire departments, they used to do that kind of thing, I guess, in big
Yeah,
cities.
there was a movie made about that with Bill Cosby called Mother Jugs and Speed, where ambulance companies would race around town and try to get there first to get the patient to the hospital. In our case, if I can, do you want to finish or do you want
Yeah,
me to?
I'm concerned about it because I don't want unsafe conditions happening or bad decisions.
So in this case, this contract is very similar to how we already operate. And how we already operate is the fire department generally arrives on scene first, because we have 3 ambulances, much closer, and we stabilize the patient. That's our primary mission. We are going to evaluate the patient. We are going to care for them. We're going to provide good treatment for them. And then when HVA comes up, they're going to bring the stretcher up. Our personnel is going to put them on the stretcher, and they're going to go to the hospital. And our firefighters are going to stay in the community and work. That's kind of what the board said they wanted, and that's exactly what we're going to do. That's what's done today. That's what's been done for the last 20 years, and that's what's going to happen here. What this contract gives us, though, is it eliminates all those restrictive things that were in the previous rules, in that you could only transport in specific times and this and that. And if HVA was coming from 20 minutes away, it didn't speak to that. It just said HVA transports. So in this, we're saying if HVA is too far away, we expect them to notify us, and that's when we would then transport.
And frankly, I'm looking at Gary Heitman, because we got those ideas from you. Because I remember back in June, your argument, which is valid, was shouldn't be about the money, should be about patient safety and response times and responsiveness, and that's what this does.
Based on your scenario, Chief, Plymouth Township does all the work, HVA comes in, says, okay, guys, you can take them off to the hospital right now. If HVA shows up with a paramedic, do they charge $145 and we charge for our services as well?
No, that would be a violation of federal law. Only the ambulance company that transports the patient will ever bill. So you have to put the patient in your ambulance and take him to the hospital to bill. The only exception that I will throw into that is we have a cost recovery ordinance in Plymouth Township for car accidents. We still may bill for the cleanup at the cost recovery.
Based on that, do you see any insurance benefits for Plymouth Township citizens as part of this program? I would think we would have lower insurance rates.
You mean car insurance rates?
No. I do know, I mean, I don't know what you're getting at specifically, but I do know that our overall fire insurance rating system is something that the chief and I are both committed to reviewing as soon as the application or the reapplication or the reevaluation period begins. Because of the substantial improvements that we've made in our fire department over the last 3 years, including new equipment, modern life-saving equipment, hiring more people to work for us, and possibly agreements like this, I'm hoping, no guarantees, but I'm hoping that it would improve our insurance rating, which again could result in lower insurance rates.
Well, one of the things
is insurance rating based on fire protection?
Well, that's how it works. That's how it works. So, you know.
It's based on fire protection, not ambulance transport capability.
I didn't know if that fed into that, but one of the things we learned when we first took office was our insurance rating was very high compared to all the communities around us. And as Kurt said, we've done a lot to improve that. Let's get the rating up and lower the insurance.
Certainly no harm in asking.
Yeah. Trustee Kermey is correct. That affects firefighting. However, with that being said, our ambulances carry firefighting equipment, so we do get bonus points for our ambulances because they carry firefighters and firefighting equipment.
Let's get back to the 5% increase. Is that over the 2-year contract? Or is it 5% per year?
That would be up to 5% a year.
A year. So you could be back here in a year from now asking for 5% increase, and the board would have to approve that or disapprove it. Is that right?
So anything above 5%, the board would have
The township shall be advised of any requested changes above 5%. So they can continue to charge. No.
Okay. Okay. I know I have one other question, but somebody else can go forward.
Oh, okay. Anybody else?
I have a question for our attorney.
Yes, sir.
So you gave us a written opinion, and in the opinion on page 2, you said some things about insisting upon indemnification, dealing with insurance requirements, they can be specified, and then a written contract vastly reduces ambiguities, which a written contract then would diminish the likelihood of litigation since you wouldn't have a lot of vagueness over who does what. So that's a general opinion. Have you reviewed this contract, and does this contract meet the kind of sense that you've given us in this opinion?
I have reviewed the contract in its entirety. I concentrated mostly on the terms of the contract itself rather than the specifications set forth in the exhibit. Those would be technical issues for Chief Phillips. But as to the general terms of the contract, yes, I did review it, and yes, it does appear acceptable from a legal standpoint, specifically with respect to the insurance and indemnification requirements.
So just maybe an observation. Last week we approved a whole set of retiree benefit changes, and one of the reasons was because this board was a fiduciary and therefore potentially subject to litigation. And by having this contract, we're kind of doing the same thing if we approve it. We're reducing the likelihood that we would be sued for something that HVA would do today without a written contract. Am I safe to assume that?
Yes. As a general rule, it's always advisable to have a written contract. The law does not require a contract to be written to be enforceable. However, the more concrete and specific a contract is, and a concrete and specific written contract, or a written contract would almost always contain more specific and concrete terms than an oral contract. Concreteness reduces litigation. If you have ambiguities, people disagree over what our agreement was, that invites litigation. Having it rock solid on paper discourages litigation.
And more importantly, Jack, as I'm sure you know, when you're dealing with a contract of this nature, we are both vulnerable to third-party litigation, and that can be brought against HVA, the township, or more than likely both of us. And that makes something like this far more critical than a regular contract for, like, say, the golf course management. I'm throwing that out as an example, where it would be more of a two-party relationship. Here, we have the introduction of other parties that can claim relief in the event of alleged negligence.
That's exactly right. And even if a third party does sue either the township or HVA, the respective rights and liabilities of the township and HVA are specified in the contract.
So does this contract cover a situation where the 911 caller is referred to HVA and there's the medical advice being given by HVA over the 911 phone call? And in the unlikely event that that advice, that medical information turns out to be harmful, does this contract protect the township from that so-called, I don't know what you call it, malpractice that HVA has committed?
It does. The indemnification provision provides that to the extent that the township is either named in a lawsuit or is otherwise liable under whatever theory, I'm having a hard time thinking of a possible legal theory wherein the township would be liable for HVA's negligence. But in the event that did arise, this contract provides that HVA indemnifies the township if that happens. And it also provides that the township is to be named an additional insured under HVA's insurance policy.
Respondent superior.
Similarly, Kevin, I mean, we saw what recently happened in Canton, where one of their dispatchers was literally asleep during a life-threatening call, and that was at the township level. So, conversely, we would also be first in line to be sued if our dispatch was somehow allegedly negligent.
Yes. Now, if the township is negligent, they have a number of defenses under governmental immunity, depending on the theory of liability put forth by the plaintiff. There is no cross indemnification in this contract. In other words, the township is not indemnifying HVA for the township's negligence, and the reason for that is that under the Michigan Constitution and case law under the Michigan Constitution, municipalities may not indemnify third parties.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
Come back to the portion, I can't find it, about what the fire chief decides. Has to do with the area and the facilities? Will you show me where that is?
25 miles that he just
And
It's on page 8, called Destination of Patient.
page 8 of the PDF?
Yes.
Okay.
HVA agrees to transport patients to the appropriate hospital or other destination of the patient's choice or to out of the Township Fire Department service area locations in accordance with protocols established by the local medical control authority. So that what that really means is the patient's condition. You can't go to the hospital up in Ogama if you're having a heart attack. the Township Fire Department service area is defined annually by the fire chief.
Chief, would that be do you envision that being a radius or a list of hospitals that would be go or no-go?
I've typically, I mean, the hospitals that we currently use, we have used for the last 25 years, with the exception of the 2 hospitals that were built in the last 25 years there. So I don't envision this list changing drastically over the years.
Except we're going to have a level 3 ER.
Right here, yes.
Right down the street. That's going to be a change.
Specifically, I know a lot of our residents, it's the 3rd most popular hospital is the University of Michigan. So that's one criteria I said has to kind of remain in. It's a place our township residents want to go. So that's how I did it in this case, is I said, what radius would encompass the University of Michigan, what other hospitals are in there. That's why Henry Ford West Bloomfield also was in there, because that was also within that radius.
So, for example, in the case of a severe burn, the best place to go is University of Michigan.
Or Henry Ford downtown that also has a burn chamber. Yes.
So you would make that decision. Let's say someone is having a heart attack and they don't want to go to St. Mary's, which generally would be your protocol. They want to go to University of Michigan. What do they have to do to make sure that happens?
In that case, if they were of sound mind and body, as determined by the paramedics on scene, they would have to sign a refusal of care form saying that they understand the risks involved in taking them to a farther hospital. And then we would transport. We would also call St. Mary's Hospital and get permission from the medical control director or the doctor, letting them know what the patient's condition is, what their vitals are, and if we had permission to take that patient farther. And there have been instances where doctors have refused that based on the patient's condition.
So the patient cannot overrule a physician?
They cannot.
Even if they sign off?
I am sure there is a scenario in which they could. There's many scenarios where they could, but generally speaking, we're going to take them to the closest, most appropriate hospital, and once they are stabilized, then they can go to any hospital they like. We'll transfer them most likely by HVA or another private ambulance company to the hospital they wish.
Okay, but usually, if you're serious, you go there, you stay there. My concern is that in the
That's
heat of the battle,
not true anymore. People move all the time.
Generally, you have a fireman looking down at you saying, we're taking you to St. Mary's, and you say no, and then the guy says, well, we can't do anything else. We're going to St. Mary's. You get into that kind of a thing, and I'm trying to understand how it would work smoothly.
Typically, it does work very smoothly. Most of the time, you should say to a patient, your condition requires you to go to the closest hospital. We'd really like to take you there. Most patients go, okay, I understand. Very rarely do you have somebody that's that obstinate that says, oh, no, I definitely have to go here. There are some very specific cases with patients with LVADs, left ventricular assistance devices, that can only go to specific hospitals.
They want to be where their specialist is.
Yes, there are some conditions where that is appropriate. Again, doctors practice medicine, as they say, and each run is a little bit different. But we don't generally have arguments over where you're going at scene. I mean, we try to accommodate patients as best we can, and we try to get them to go to the best hospital for their condition.
So HVA, how do you handle that situation?
We have a similar process. And as the chief said, it's very rare that we have that circumstance that occurs. And then when we do, we often have the paramedic get on the phone or radio with the physician, and sometimes have the physician, especially if you knew about the telephone, talk to the patient, because oftentimes they'll give the physician more credibility.
And sometimes people don't want to be transported, like in a car accident.
Correct.
And you offer them the opportunity to sign off.
That is correct, yes. We explain to them the risks, and we give them a piece of paper, and they sign off saying that they understand the risks and don't want to go to the hospital.
One quick question. HVA, do you have 2 different types of vehicles, the emergency advanced life support and a non-emergent patient transport, or is there one.
So we do have basic life support ambulances that are doing interfacility transports.
So the non-emergent transport services would use the same one and be out of area for non-emergent. So if they want to go to Okemos, your non-emergent life support would take the same ambulance that would be responding to other things?
Well, if there was an emergency call and the patient wanted to go somewhere else, we'd still probably use our advanced life, our paramedic ALS unit to do that.
I'm just looking at vehicles
Yeah, so
and personnel.
yeah, the BLS units are primarily for scheduled transfers.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else?
Just one comment from my perspective. Kurt, Dan, I appreciate you working through this agreement and this contract. I know it wasn't your first choice, but I think at the end of the day, exactly as you mentioned, Kurt, you addressed the concerns of the board and, in my opinion, the needs of the citizens. We talked a lot about liability, but I was very concerned going into this that if we had taken over 100% of the transport, HVA probably would have walked out of the community. If it was my business, I would have walked out of the community, which would have put us and our citizens at greater risk when we're transporting and we're taking our firefighters and EMS technicians out of the service area. It would have put us at greater liability, in my opinion. So I'm very pleased with the outcome of this. I think at the end of the day, the citizens of Plymouth Township win. I think this is a win-win for everybody.
Well, with the disparity of the mutual aid right now, it's even more of a win-win for all of us. So I agree with you.
Yeah, you would have had Canton Township, Northville Township, Plymouth Township, Westland, all dependent on themselves only.
Right, right.
And trading mutual aid in a big circle on a regular basis.
Oddly enough, I don't know if HVA would continue to provide service to the city of Plymouth if you weren't providing service to the Plymouth Township. So,
Contract.
well,
Yeah.
I think I heard it's been extended by mutual non-action. But anyway, just point that out as maybe a subsidiary benefit. We'll hopefully get lots of positive letters from city residents if we approve this contract.
So it's
I say ironic.
It's a community positive.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the audience? We will open it up. I just asked that you limit it to 3 minutes
When are we voting on this?
next week. Okay. Well,
Just for clarification.
Can you pick up the little mic?
The little one? Okay. You think I really need it? Oh, okay. Just for clarification, now, this contract does not come with any payment from us, from the township to
No.
HVA?
no,
Or, okay, it's basically HVA is agreeing to the terms, to basically, okay.
No
Okay.
cash transfer either way.
Okay, that's clear.
and they're not paying for any of our activities either. Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Don?
Thank you.
Don's got
Oh, sorry, Don. You got to stand up. You got to come to the mic.
Go to
Give him the mic. Give him
Go
the
to
mic if he can't stand up.
We get complaints that they can't hear us, so we have to comply.
The question I have, sir, is the reporting structure that you're going to have for the township when this contract is initiated. Will you have, how comprehensive will be that reporting structure and how frequent will it be? In other words, will it be monthly? Will it include items like the time of the dispatch, the run time, the response time, and all those other critical factors?
So in addition to the annual report, we'll have a quarterly report that goes to the fire chief, which will detail more of that information, including response times. It will include more of the quarterly report to the fire chief will include those types of information, which would include response times, numbers of runs, and those things. So times of calls and addresses and those things would not be included in that. But response times and call specifics. Oh, there'd be ways to check the performance, absolutely. there'd be enough detail that the fire chief and the township could verify any of that information. So we have not specified
Well, we're going to,
in detail of that.
we are going to determine that. We will determine what we are looking for from them. What we want, at a minimum, what we're looking for is number of runs and the licensing status of the individuals who responded. Okay. All right. Hearing no other comments or questions, we're going to move on, and thank you, HVA, again, for stopping by. Budget discussion. Tonight we have police and fire. Looks like the police are jumping up. They want to be first, and they've got their, okay, they're all ready to rock and roll here. So we have Chief Teddington and Lieutenant Brothers, Lieutenant Kudra, and you guys know what to do, so why don't you walk us through your proposed 2020 budget review.
Okay.
No, not that. You got to use a little ball. It's got to be green.
Test.
There you go.
Okay. Again, I'd like to thank the board for, once again, for your continuous support. I think we had a good 2018, 2019, and I base that on the fact that none of our officers were injured. I don't think we had any very real serious crimes, and I believe the police department is running very efficiently and very well. What you're seeing here today is our proposed budget. If you can go to the next slide, Bob. The organizational chart, we do have a vacancy in our detective bureau. We've hired 2 more officers. We've given conditional job offers, but we're also losing people as fast as we're getting, as fast as we're hiring.
Chief,
next slide, Bob.
Chief, sorry, didn't we have somebody just resign again last week?
Yes. So Sergeant Sapinko retired.
Yeah.
We gave 2 conditional job offers that would have brought us to full strength. But we just had an officer resign to go to another department that had benefits. So
That had
I'm sorry?
different benefits. We have benefits.
Well, I'm sorry, better benefits, I should have said, or at least in their view. Next slide. I tell you, we'll go to the next one, Bob. I'm sorry. Since we're talking about it, this is the department picture. Actually, this is from 2000. It was taken in 2016, but if you see the red marks, those are all the employees that we've lost in the last 2 years. And some through retirement, some went to other departments, but it really represents about 20-25% of our department is the turnover that we're experiencing. And I can't think of the last time we've been at full strength. It hasn't been, and it's not because we're not trying. Lieutenant Kudra goes, Grand Valley, we're recruiting from all over the place. Either the candidates don't pass our rigorous background investigation, or the number of applicants we're getting for these positions are really minimal. I'm sure Jerry would remember back 10, 15, 20 years ago, if you had a vacancy in the police department, you would have 100 people applying for this job. All right? We have to go out and look for people. And not only do we have to look and find them, we have to have a conditional job offer in our hand when we interview them, because they're going to Northville Township, they're going to the next department. So it's really flipped as far as the hiring process. It's really a buyer's market, meaning the officers really can pick any department that they want to go to. And a lot of them would love to work in this department, but they're choosing defined benefit and health care benefits at retirement, and that's, we're kind of in a losing proposition when we're trying to not only hire but retain.
But isn't that in part because there are far less people going into law enforcement?
Probably that, but with that, there's far fewer candidates that we're choosing from. So they're picking the departments that they feel have the better benefits. Livonia, for example, they've always had a defined contribution, or they've had it for the last 20 years. They're down 35 or 40 officers, and they've made a decision to go back to the defined benefit. So, Okay, next slide. Okay, so really what you have in front of you is a list, and I sent the list out along with the backup information if you had an opportunity to take a look at that. None of these items here are wants. All of these items that we presented here are really needs, perhaps with the exception of chairs, but even the chairs that we're trying to replace need to be replaced because some are broken. So, we're very cost conscious, and as I said, all of these items are necessary. We can go into a lot of detail. I have Lieutenant Kudra and Assistant Chief Brothers here to go into specifics, but these are all the things that we need to purchase this year. When you see budget 305, that means that's coming out of the general fund budget. And in addition to the general fund budget.
305?
I'm sorry?
305, okay.
305, yes. And so we're buying, laptops, laser units for speed control, mobile field force, ammunition for 2 years. We discovered it's more cost effective if we buy 2 years worth of ammunition than 1 year. Patrol rifles. We're also buying 6 suppressors for training purposes. And
what is a
I think,
suppressor?
I'm sorry? I didn't.
A suppressor, you're buying those?
I'm sorry, I didn't
what
hear
kind of
that. And
training?
the reason we're buying it is because I didn't hear that. So, for training purposes, rather than having the constant noise and hurting the officers' ears, these suppressors will be used during training, and it will minimize the noise and the damage to ears.
Where do we go for training? Whose gun range do we utilize?
Canton's gun range.
Okay. Is that built into their police station?
No, it's off of Michigan Avenue, near the garbage dump.
Okay.
So.
It's fairly expensive.
It's indoors, right?
No, it's outdoors.
It's outdoors.
Right. And then simunition, handguns, and equipment. We already have this, but this is going to add to our training opportunities. And this is for the active shooter training that we do in the schools. In the event that there's an active shooter, we're hopefully well prepared for that. Next slide, Bob, please. Key Fob Scan Upgrade. This is for the entire department and actually for the entire township. The Key Fob, the hardware as well as the software has to be replaced. I think it was new with the building, so it's, 12, 13 years old at this point. New phones, the township's looking at investing in a new phone system, which is required.
When you say phone system for police only?
No, for
township-wide?
Township-wide.
It's allocated, right?
Yes, it's in the budget.
And that would be
But
our
it's
portion.
allocated to departments?
Right.
Just FYI, we're double counting that. That's in your budget. That's also in Bob's Jenks budget.
Yeah.
So Bob, in the general operating budget, put the phone system in for everybody. So yours,
okay,
we can pull that out.
But can they pay?
We're even saving more money tonight.
Can you pay for yours out of drug forfeiture funds or no?
Well, we probably could, but there's certain things, and let me get into the forfeiture, and I think I can answer that question. Bob, that's the next
I guess
slide.
that leads to the next thing, is will you allocate these types of costs which are township-wide? Do you allocate them by department, or they're going to all be in information systems?
No, they're all in general operating. Yeah.
Okay.
Under IT?
No.
Okay.
In general operating. So all the stuff that, all of the stuff that benefits the entire township, we could go through the exercise of allocating it by department, but it's the same dollars. But we've always traditionally just put that under general operating expenses.
And the new phone system will be leased as well. That's just for your information. There'll be leased phones.
We can talk more about that in another budget.
Yeah, but since we're on the subject matter right now.
Makes sense.
Okay, so the federal forfeiture, this will be a list of the items that we're purchasing out of the federal forfeiture. Again, I want to remind the board, though, is that we have to enhance our budget in order to use forfeiture funds. We can't supplant, we can't say, well, we're getting $200,000 from forfeiture, so we're going to reduce the police department budget by $200,000. So that's why we're careful to make sure that we spend a reasonable amount out of the general fund in terms of items and equipment. The forfeiture fund, this would be budget 265. We're looking, this year our goal is to equip our officers with body cameras and recording equipment. It's pretty much the industry standard. Most departments, most progressive departments, unfortunately, we have to go to body cameras at this day in age. It's almost standard. It's going to be standard equipment in most departments in the next year or so. Covert trackers, I don't want to get into that too much. If you have questions about that, you can call me. Binoculars, and we're looking to replace some weapons as well.
Let's talk about the shotguns.
You said, hang on a second, you said 265?
Yes.
That's the federal drug forfeiture fund.
Township Hall, okay. Oh, that's the department.
Okay, Chuck, you had a question?
Shotguns.
Yes.
Why, the shotguns typically, you don't use them that often. They don't wear out.
They rust.
They do. And how old are
you using them to practice?
Well, we train with them. They get beat up in and out of the car. And there are, I would say, what, 15 years old, the shotguns, or more than that even.
So shotguns are still being used versus the AR that most people want? Or?
Well, we carry both the shotguns and the rifles. And the old shotguns are going to be traded in as well. So we're really, it's not really costly to replace these at this point.
Chief, at the time that we go to body cameras and recording equipment, let me know, because we're going to have to notify the MMRMA. That is always one of the, every year when we do our annual insurance update, that is one of the things that they ask us a lot of questions about.
So our rate will improve maybe?
I don't know. I'm not going there. So,
right. So did they, body cams, I think when we talked about this before, one of the issues was that was battery life couldn't last a full shift. So
they've improved it a lot at this point.
Well, he's hitting on a good point. Do you want to wait another year so you can get a better system versus coming here in 3 years saying, oh, these don't work anymore?
That really wasn't my point, but
well, you're...
Well, we have waited.
I'll make it my point.
Well, we have waited. We're probably one of the last departments that have gone to body cameras. We've waited for other departments to work out the kinks in the camera and the technology and the storing and the FOIAs and all of those types of things. So I don't expect that we're going to buy it January 1st. Our goal, I said, is to purchase them in 2020. But we're going to do a lot of research, and if the board would like, I'll bring it back to you before we make the purchase and tell you how it's going to work and what we're going to do with it. So,
I'll tell you, my wife would attest that they are very effective tools in prosecutions, and frankly, they help the police more often than not.
Right. They do, but unfortunately, in 20 years ago, the officer could testify as to what happened and people believed him. Now you have to prove it. You have to show that actually happened, and I have kind of mixed feelings about it. But we do have in-car cameras with recorders, so it's not far from what we're already doing.
A nice job saving $400 on each shotgun with the trade-in to the Benellis, too. That's very, very good. Good news. I mean, versus $650, it's a steal for that. Thank you for that.
Okay. Let's see, next slide. All right, so again, this is just some additional equipment for our firearms. You'll see an ultrasonic cleaner for weapons. We're also purchasing a small caliber rifle, and then some evidence room upgrades, which includes how we store our evidence. Oftentimes we have to hold on to it for not only months but years. And we have a great sergeant that's in charge of the evidence room, and he keeps it organized. But in order to keep it organized, we need to do some upgrades. I also mentioned we're purchasing 16 office chairs to replace chairs that are circa this building. When we built the building is when we bought the furniture, so we're in the process of replacing some of the furniture. Okay, if we switch to the state forfeiture budget, we're going to purchase or requesting to purchase 3 patrol cars and 3 Detective Bureau vehicles. I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Kudra because somebody's going to ask, well, what kind of cars are you going to purchase? And we're still debating that. So Lieutenant Kudra just went and test drove some of the newer models, and I think you can enlighten it.
So I know I spoke to Mr. Heisey about this a few months ago about my desire to switch to Chrysler products for a number of reasons, one of them being they're the only manufacturer of a police sedan anymore. After test driving everything, what I'm going to end up recommending to the board is that we replace our SUVs. We stay with Fords, and we go with the 2020 Explorers, and we replace our Tauruses with Dodge Chargers. And then we'll probably do Dodge Chargers for the DB cars as well. That'll be what I'll be recommending.
For what kind of cars did you just say? Something?
Dodge Chargers?
No, but you said something
DB,
DB.
Detective Bureau.
Detective Bureau, yeah. So it's the administrative type vehicles. They're not pursuit-rated vehicles that I buy for the DB.
So how do you determine the mix between sedans and sport utilities?
I poll my officers, and I see who wants to drive a sedan and who prefers an SUV. There's really a cost benefit to going with sedans. 60% of the officers want to drive a sedan. 40% want to drive an SUV is what I have found. All of them are all-wheel drive, so it's not really an issue as far as, one being better in the weather than the other. They're all tanks, pretty much unstoppable.
The Dodge is an all-wheel drive sedan?
Yep.
Well, that should be better. It has a lower center of gravity, better handling, better pursuit.
Well, I'll tell you what, I drove them all at last weekend, and I was very impressed with the new Ford Explorer. So.
And also, the cost of the car is illustrated in the budget proposal, but we also have to we have to outfit the vehicles with cages and light bars and plastic seats for the, so it's pretty costly to outfit these vehicles. So we always budget for that as well.
Chief, what do you do with the old vehicles? Do you auction them out?
We send them to auction, or we repurpose them within the township if they're suitable.
Yeah.
Like the building inspector or something might use them.
Right. But again, we look at the maintenance costs because typically when we take them out of service, they're going to have 75 to over 100,000 miles, and then it may be too costly to even to repurpose them within the township. So. Okay, so federal, the revenue sources. This is our balance in terms of our forfeiture funds. It does not include what we're spending out of it. This is what our current our balance is in our forfeiture funds. Again, I want to remind the board, and this is what we are doing. We're enhancing the budget. We're not supplanting and we're not replacing. We're enhancing our current budget. Okay, the next slide is our state-of-the-art communication center. Again, I think most of the board members have gone through the new and improved communication center with the new equipment and new technology. It's working out very well, and it really is something. Assistant Chief Brothers did a lot to make this happen. It's something we're very proud of.
What was the investment?
Can we get a tour?
Yeah.
About 400,000, 250 of it was for the Viper 911 system where we got the grant for it. So our
400 was spent all in the 2019 calendar year?
Correct, on everything. That's the furniture, the paint, the carpet, the ceiling tiles, the new lights. Yeah. Yeah, new monitors.
But you didn't replace every single thing in there. Where there was something that was in decent shape, you kept it, if I recall correctly. A few things.
I'm trying to remember what that was.
Yeah, well, I think there was some cabinets.
So the cabinets, I think.
Cabinets, yeah. So minor things, but I didn't think there was any gold plating going on there. And some of this was based on the input of the dispatch employees, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That pencil sharpener was in pretty good shape.
Exactly.
Okay, so what we're proposing to purchase this year is and the board probably is aware of this, we have a third position that is not currently active or operational, and we're proposing to put this third position in there, and the reason we want to do it, or one of the reasons we want to do it, is we now have a dispatch supervisor, and for the dispatch supervisor to go in and monitor what's going on, it would be nice to have a third counsel that she could sit down at. It would be nice when we have more than 2 employees working at the same time that third employee could operate from the third position. And it perhaps would help us in the future, perhaps with other things that may be planned well into the future.
You mean like medical dispatching?
Possibly. That is not on the horizon at this point, but it's something, if we're ever going to do that, we need to be equipped to do it.
This is one I want to put on the defer list, third Motorola radio position.
But this has nothing really to do with the EMD. This is not why we're asking for this. This has more to do with...
It appears to be a nice to have.
I'm sorry?
It's a nice to have, but it's
well,
not...
It's more than a nice to have. We promoted a supervisor, and if we want to really have management and control over what's going on, she has to be able to sit down and actually listen and make decisions. So it's something that we should have, and so again, it's not really a want. Are we going to, do we absolutely have to have it this year? No. But I do want to make it clear, it has nothing to do with any future EMD or medical dispatching. That has nothing to do with this request.
Chief, what is budget 325?
That is the general fund budget. We typically don't purchase items out of the forfeiture fund for the dispatch center because it's complicated, because the city has to reimburse us a certain amount, and then we have to reimburse the drug forfeiture fund. So it's less complicated by not purchasing things out of the forfeiture fund for the dispatch.
So you just raised a point. I don't know what the contract looks like with the city of Plymouth, but does our capital affect their annual charge? In other words, how much capital we invest, does it increase their fee also?
I think it does, yes.
Well, that's what we probably need to talk to them about.
Well, no, we have. Chief Al Cox is supposed to come over this week. He got tied up, but we're planning to meet next week and go over the budget with him.
Since they're our customer in this case, right?
No, we understand that. And we work very closely, and they're in agreement. Well, I don't want to speak for them, but they haven't been opposed to anything that, any of the improvements that we've made in there. Building improvements in the lockup cells. Again, we did the other side of the fence, so we did the working side, operational side of the dispatch center, and now we have to do some work on the prisoner cells by painting and improving them in there as well. We estimate it's going to be about $10,000 to improve the lockup area and the holding cells.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
A question on that. Do we have are each of these cells on monitors?
Yes, each
24/7?
Cell has a camera and an audio microphone that are, and it's direct view. A lot of dispatch centers, they're down the hall and through the door. Ours are direct view where our dispatchers are constantly watching the prisoners.
Now, we did some improvements in the lockup in the last 2 to 3 years. What was that?
I think we did cameras. We did cameras in the cells.
Okay, and what will this be? $10,000 worth of paint?
Well, not.
So several of the cylinder locks they're security rated. We buy them out of Texas. It's the only place you can get it. We have to special order the keys as well. And the locks are starting to wear out from constant use. So we had a locksmith come and look at them, and he lubricated it enough to where we can make it work. But they're $385 a piece, and we have to replace them all eventually. So that's going to be part of this. And then the rest of it would be painting. I don't know how much that's going to cost because we haven't even went out for bids. But the prisoners, when they're bored in there, they decide to scratch with their finger, and they're leaving us nice messages in there that we want to paint over. So.
Have you made any estimates or budget accommodations for the compliance with the Michigan Indigent Defense Act. There are supposedly some communication, direct lines of communications that need to be provided between the accused and the court.
Yeah, all that's already in place. The court actually received, I believe they received a grant for that, and all of that equipment was installed several months ago, and it's been up and running ever since then. And as far as I've heard, there have been no issues. It's been working flawlessly. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and then the last slide, this is some future needs.
One more.
And the big ticket item here really is this HVAC system. This is, if you remember, when we built this building, we did some value engineering, and now the value engineering, I think we saved probably $25,000 on the value engineering, and now it's going to cost $100,000 to fix it. So, and really what this is we have to be able to better adjust the temperature of the jail cells. Sometimes it's so cold in there that prisoners have to have multiple blankets, and we really need to figure out how to fix it and spend the money and do it.
When we talked about this last time and I was advocating fixing it, one of the concerns was the dispatchers were cold. Has that been somehow fixed? Because you were reluctant to spend the money 2 years ago.
Well, I think we prioritize things, and you know, if it was to replace the technology or the cells, we're going to give the prisoners another blanket. But at this point, we've done it, and I mean, we've done the improvements that we need to do.
So the dispatcher's cold or not?
No.
How did you fix it? Because that was a problem allegedly.
Computers, there's more computers in there now generating more heat.
No, so the brand new furniture, each individual station has its own fan and its own heat source with multiple temperature controls. So they actually have hot air blowing.
Don't tell us.
You have an electric heater at each station?
Correct.
With a fan?
And then there's a fan on top of it. So in the summertime, if it's hot, they can turn a fan on and it'll blow directly on them and the heat's underneath. Yeah.
Can Sue get one of those consoles too?
It's pretty state-of-the-art, actually.
It's interesting how many office buildings, no auxiliary heaters allowed.
Yeah.
Well, this is built in.
Yeah, it's actually built right into the furniture. Yeah. Yeah.
The HVAC in this entire building is a mess, and it has always been. So the good news is we don't have to fix it as often as we did for the first 2 years we were here. The repairs are.
I heard they play old township meetings and the hot air is generated.
Yeah, it's Yep.
Okay, any questions?
Yes, I have a question. So just in general, going through your budget expenditures 2020 document, and I see things like 1998, 2004.
What are you talking about, the last time it was replaced?
Well, just 2005, et cetera. So I guess my question is simply a general one. You've listed these 3 things for beyond 2020. Has everything else been updated? We don't have any 1968 weapons around that we're relying on, and
no,
that Mr. Vorva once used and broke, and we're relying on that.
And I will thank the board for that. I mean, we're a well-equipped, well-trained police department, and we kind of pride ourselves in making sure that we have top-notch equipment for the officers, vehicles, and again, thank you to the board for allowing us to do that for them. But you know, and we've also had the benefit of drug forfeiture money that has allowed us to continue to not impact the general fund budget.
So what does this leave for a balance on the forfeiture funds?
You know, I'll have to figure that out. I'm not sure, but there's always money coming in. I mean, we don't know how much each year, but at this point, we still have officers in the DEA. There's still funds coming in through our involvement in Western Wayne. So in the near future, there's still going to be forfeiture funds. But I would ask the board to, when you're making budget decisions, to consider our budget. If we didn't have drug forfeiture funds, would we still be able to fund and do the things that we need to do? So I think each year we have to look at it from that perspective. Can we do this? Can we buy cars if we don't have drug forfeiture funds? Because they're not always going to be there. I think Trustee Dorshevitz has a comment that he always makes about drug forfeiture funds. Bob?
We don't want our budget to be based on the fact that we're addicted to drug forfeiture funds.
Addicted to drug. I told you I wouldn't say that. So, okay.
Chief, one thing I want to point out, and it applies to fire as well, is you may recall that when we were doing the 2018 millage election, one of the things that I had called for was a long-term capital improvement plan for both police and fire. Those documents do exist, and board members, we can get those to you, and it will show you very clearly what the expected capital improvement project is for every year going out, I think, into the well into the 2030s, I think even beyond the expiration of the 2018 millage. So that's the kind of planning that we want to have in both departments, so that we're not sitting on a 1997 fire engine or a patrol vehicle that's got 185,000 miles on it because we didn't anticipate to budget for it. So that's just another example, I think, of working smarter in both departments that we have not seen before.
To that end, I would love to thank you three gentlemen and your staffs. You guys treat this budget like it's your money. It's quite clear. I mean, the savings we see in prisoner food, 70% we're saving in prisoner food. Vehicles. We sell used equipment that we're replacing. Looking for rebates. You guys have done an outstanding job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yeah, any other
about
questions?
The Benelli shotguns.
Yeah.
Will one of you, when you get a chance, send me a photograph saying where that thing is manufactured, the shotgun? I know
Okay.
it says Benelli, USA, but I want to see where it's manufactured.
Okay.
In other words, is it manufactured in USA or is it manufactured in Italy?
I hope it's in Italy for
No,
certain
I hope it's in
reasons, but,
USA.
Benelli, USA.
They make better guns.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the public? Okay. Chief Phillips.
Do you have a presentation? Are you going to do it yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least I hope to.
Very good.
The first person who's ever been able to do that.
All right, does this thing work? Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good morning, good evening, I'm sorry. I have been away. I have been at a grant management class in Emmitsburg, Maryland for the last week, so I do apologize if my budget is not as polished as the police department's is. The fire department 2020 budget is a very small budget. It is a modest budget just designed to replace a lot of small equipment. As the police chief already noted, that he had things that he had to replace. Well, in 2019, we replaced the things that we absolutely had to replace. We replaced our engine 1 with a brand new engine. We got $400,000 of money from Representative Noble. And the sale of a cell tower also helped replace Rescue 2, which was a 2003 ambulance that had been in service. The fire engine that will be going out of service is still operating to this day. We are using it right now so that we can repair other vehicles so that we do not have a gap in service. We have 3 fire trucks operating right now at all 3 stations. We have one of our newer trucks getting much needed repairs that we had to delay because we didn't have enough trucks to service our community.
Chief, what's been the early reports on the report card on the new fire truck?
It's big. I mean, that's the first thing everybody said when they got it. We haven't replaced a truck in 20 years. And the truck that's leaving service was a 1989. As Kurt said earlier, 97. I wish I had a 97. But the truck that's leaving is much smaller. So far, the guys like the truck. They like all the new enhancements. There are some things that we've done, some initiatives that we've done to protect firefighters in the future and to protect the board. One of them is called the Clean Cab Initiative. The Clean Cab Initiative takes the cab of the truck where our firefighters spend the most time and takes anything that's inside of a fire, anything that's exposed to the products of combustion, and it denies access to our firefighters. We keep that out of where they sit and breathe. What research has found is a much higher rate of cancer in firefighters, and one of the things they've said is because they get out of this dirty fire and they get in a fire truck and they sit in their dirty gear. So we have, over the last 3 years, created lots of things to get that product of combustion off our firefighters after a fire. And now with the newest truck and the new ladder coming, nothing that gets exposed to fire goes into that cab ever. So this is great for us. Michigan has a cancer presumption law now that presumes that any full-time firefighter who has cancer got it on the job. This is our way of preventing those occurrences and protecting our communities. We also approved the purchase of a ladder truck, Ladder 3, which will be arriving December of this year. We will place it in service as soon as possible. That was thanks to the public safety millage, and I thank everybody who came out and voted for that. This vehicle, we have the manufacturer will be coming out baked into the price. We have 6 training sessions with them. Specialists and aerial operations specialists in this will be coming from Wisconsin to Plymouth Township to train our firefighters to operate this piece of equipment as soon as possible. So I don't get drug forfeiture funds, so I have to write a lot of grants. That's one of the reasons I went out to Maryland, is because we write a lot of grants. Well, we also get a lot of grants. I'm happy to announce that we are a subrecipient this year to a grant from Northville Township. This grant is going to replace our stretchers and add power loads to our 2 2015 ambulances. In December of this year, we bought a new ambulance with a power load and a power cot at a cost of $40,000. We're going to be putting those in our other 2 ambulances with this federal grant. Roughly about $100,000 with 2 power loads and 3 cots we'll be receiving in this grant. We also are a subrecipient to a Northville City grant replacing fire hose. We have to replace a lot of our fire hose. It gets old. Our fire hose, we have hose from the 60s that is still in service. So we have gotten a grant for that, and that's another benefit for this year. We are still waiting for a grant to get a new set of Jaws of Life. This set of Jaws is going to go on the ladder truck when it arrives, but we are waiting and hoping that we get this grant. All right, we're also under a SAFER grant. We added 3 new firefighters this year. They started in January. The SAFER grant pays a portion of those 3 firefighters' salary from 2019 to 2021. It pays 75%, 75%, and 35% of a first-year firefighter's salary. So I want to say that so everybody understands. After a firefighter's been here for a year, he gets a step-up pay. The grant still only pays 75% of his first-year wages. We are asking for no staffing increase in 2020. We will remain at 8 firefighters per day. Our staff is 1 captain, 2 lieutenants at each of the outstations, and 5 fire stations. We have 3 buildings with 8 firefighters.
So
Chief,
at each fire station, you have a boss and a worker?
Yeah. Well, at Station 1, we have a boss and 3 workers. At Station 2, we have a boss and a worker, and Station 3, a boss and a worker.
Chief, can you back up to your previous slide?
Yes.
So you have, they're still waiting on a grant for Jaws of Life and pneumatic airbags for vehicle accidents. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to get grants, but I also believe that we should not be going around begging for money like this. I mean, I look at Jaws of Life, maybe the airbags, but certainly Jaws of Life as a critical life safety measure. And I think I don't know if we can do it in this budget, but I think again, when the people voted for that millage increase, I think they expected us to spend that money on critical life-saving equipment. And whether or not, maybe this is a,
Yeah, but I disagree.
you know,
We should-
maybe this is an in-kind sort of thing, or a match of some sort.
There is a match. There's a 10% match to all these. But with that being said,
I think you're doing a great job going after grants because, you know, our
Well, he's
our
answering my
taxes-
question. Bob, let him answer
our
my
taxes
question
have just
first
been
before
going up and
you
up
give a
and up
speech.
since
Let him answer my question first. He
spending-
hasn't finished my question.
Spending
You were
keeps
talking
going
about
up and up
about
and
matching
up and
grants,
up and up, and
you're
taxes
just going to keep
going up
interrupting
and
me.
up.
Thank you.
Good job, Dan.
one of the other things that I think is important to note is we do not want to be, we all know what the word supplanting is, thanks to the police chief. He's done a great job of educating us, and we don't want to be charged with supplanting our funds. So you will, if we do not get this, I will be standing up here asking you to purchase these things.
What is the present?
In 2020?
Probably in 2019, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay.
I would really like this to be put onto the new ladder truck that gets here in December.
How much is it?
The jaws will be about $30,000, and that's for a cutter, a spreader, and a ram.
So what?
No, man.
What is the current state
Look at
of
this.
where
Every
on the present
department
machine?
So I'm glad you asked that
And
question.
it's $30,000 surprise that
Our-
in 1 month away from taking delivery, or 2 months.
Our last set of jaws we purchased, we didn't purchase, well, we purchased them, but we got them from Firehouse Subs right here on Ann Arbor Road. So
You got
go in-
them from a submarine sandwich shop. And
That's right.
We appreciate the gift,
From a-
but you got it from a submarine sandwich shop.
And what year
That's
was
great.
it?
That was the same year you guys were elected, I believe. We applied for the grant, that was 2016, right? In early 2016, and then we got them at the end of the year.
They lasted less than 2 years?
No, that set is on this engine right here that responds to primarily 275 and then secondarily to M14. This set is going to replace a set of hydraulic jaws that are on the current engine one, that is, those jaws are over 20 years old. Now, the issue with that is, and I'm sure you know this, Trustee Kermey, is that the federal requirements for rollover protection have changed drastically in the last few years. Because of that, our older jaws cannot cut through the increased boron steel in the A and B pillars. So because of that, we need these new jaws.
Are they electric, the new ones?
They are electric. They are a pneumatic jaws that is run by an electric battery. It is all in a self-contained unit. The other great advantage to this is it cut down on the cost of replacing this fire engine and the other fire engine, because we had to build those components into the truck when it was manufactured. That was about a $20,000 savings to the manufacturer of the truck, because we didn't have to have all those pre-pipe systems in there. So it's very cost neutral to go to these, and they're smaller, they're less weight, and they're easier to operate for our firefighters.
So you knew this before we ordered the truck?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So when were you going to tell us we need to add $30,000 to the 2019 budget?
I told the former finance director about 3-4 months ago. But we were also waiting for this grant, which was supposed to be awarded in April, but if you remember, there was a federal furlough, and because of it, all of the grants were slowed down considerably.
So you're getting an indication that there will be no award?
At this time, I don't know. The awards are coming out. Typically, they come out on Fridays of each week. We were notified 2 weeks ago for the Northville City Awards. My grant number is a little higher. It was submitted later, so assuming they're just going in line, we would expect, we'll know by the end of the month. They expect to have all grants announced by the end of the month.
End of September? End of September?
That's correct.
Are you going to talk about your total budget year over year, dollar amounts? in your presentation? Or?
Yeah, I think that's coming up just after this. I kind of wanted to give you an idea of where we're trying to get money from and how we're trying to save money for the township. So here is my year-over-year budget right here. 84% of our budget is personnel costs. As you can see right there, we have the 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 projected budget. In this year's budget, only 6% of this budget is new equipment or replacing equipment. 84% of this budget is personnel costs. 10% is maintaining our township structures, our phone system, our communication system, heating the buildings, all of that.
Since I can't see, well, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I'll defer for a minute. Go ahead, both of you.
No, I was just going to ask a question. If you took out because the wide swing in numbers is largely, I think, due to the contributions to the pension and OPEB. If you took that out, what's the trend?
Actually, the biggest trend is if you take out all the equipment we purchased last year. That's the difference. If you want to talk about OPEB, though, I'm happy to talk about that. The increase to OPEB is a little over $100,000, $130,000, which, again, Treasurer Clinton has so well informed the board of those costs going up over the next several years. And then pension is...
Okay, I'm confused. You said OPEB is going up year to year?
Yes.
So what line item are you referring to in that?
In this, the OPEB line item I am referring to is 101-336-714.
The first one.
714?
020.
Yeah, dash 020.
Oh, 020.
That's the one I am referring to.
The first one on page 8.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the budget. We have this multiple page printout.
Dated 8/31.
Yep.
At the top.
Yeah,
9/5.
On the top, yeah.
9/5.
8/31 on the page. 9/5 is on
All
the
right,
top.
I don't know, my page is stapled, but it's page 8 of 10.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
Very top.
I'm trying to understand this.
Okay, I have not seen that. That was given to you by the former budget director, I
Okay.
believe.
But for that line item, 020, what do you show for the 2019 amended budget number?
20. On the amended budget, I show 687, 552.52.
Okay, so
You're right.
what do you
I
show?
was looking at the 2019 activity budget. I apologize.
So what do you show for the 2020 requested budget?
552,291. So a reduction of 70,000?
291 or 31?
I apologize. I don't wear my glasses much. They're brand new, and
130,000.
I'm just trying to understand numbers, and I'm not a good numbers person, but I thought
I probably should look there.
I thought that was a decrease.
It is. It is.
Okay,
I was
good.
looking at the activity line item. I
Bob, is there a way
apologize.
for you to zoom in on, or Chief, can you zoom in on that using your laptop?
I
No?
cannot.
Okay.
So,
What are you getting at, Jack?
well, I'm just trying to understand these numbers
Because he was confused because
Yeah.
the chief said OPEB went up.
yeah.
It was the opposite. It
I
went down.
did, and the reason why it went down is because of all of the brand new firefighters we've hired. Less money. That's why that went down.
You know, it's really good to have facts and to make decisions based on facts. I appreciate this. So, just a follow-up. If I understand correctly, your year-over-year budget, 19 as amended to 20, is also a reduction. Am I right about that?
You are-
$690,000?
That is correct.
And why? What's in the 690 that we should know about?
Most of that was the cost of the fire truck and the ambulance in 2019. Those are the predominant costs. I mean, you're talking between those two pieces of equipment, $800,000 of equipment, just with two pieces of equipment.
But you go from $1 million to 50,000,
Right.
so that's 950, but the budget doesn't go down by 950.
The overall budget or the fire
Overall.
budget? Well, no, because there's other requests that are being made. So, Mark, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we made a financing decision as a board last year when he bought the new fire truck and the new ambulance to pay cash for that because we received the grants, because we sold that cell tower. The ladder truck that is going to be purchased and we'll take delivery on in November, we're going to be financing that. So each year there'll be $113,000, which is in the budget, for the next 10 years
That's
to
right
finance
under equipment,
that.
Trustee
Is
Dorchester.
that under equipment lease payments?
Yeah, it should say something like
Yeah, it's under lease
113.
payments.
Yeah, second from the bottom.
Yep.
So that's paying off the truck.
That is paying off the truck, correct.
That's the
It says
depreciation.
50,000?
The 115,000.
115, that's the ladder truck and the lease for the computer equipment that we lease.
But is that a depreciation expense or is that?
No, that's a lease payment.
That's a
Well,
lease
let me put it, it's a financing payment.
Yeah.
We're not leasing it, we're renting to buy.
Yeah.
Question. I think the document I have, I'm looking at, is that overtime?
Yes.
Can you zoom?
There is overtime. I wish I
don't
could
see
zoom
it.
in it.
Overtime.
It's 130,000 on my document.
On the handout, is there an overtime line?
Yeah, it's,
Yes, the overtime line is 709.
yeah. It's gone down to 45,000.
Building? Page
Well,
7,
since
okay.
amended budget's
So
gone
the
up
overtime,
30,000.
what does it say in your document there? Overtime,
130,000.
130,000, and
Yep.
what was it in 2018?
In 2018, it was 175,000.
All right.
So we're down 45,000.
If you remember, 2017 is when we opened Fire Station 2, and we did not hire all the staff immediately. We hired them over time.
Chief Act 604 overtime is,
Act 604 is an old term used in Michigan for paying firefighters who work too many hours over the required thing. That was replaced by the Fair Labor Standard Act, FLSA. We just kept the vernacular as 604.
so that goes up 25,000, while the other one comes down 45,000. So we're still, overtime, we're still 20,000 less total.
Yeah, Act 604 overtime is they're scheduled to work, they're required to work it. It's not overtime, they come in and work it, but they're required by law to be paid for it.
I got to stop again. You said it goes up? I see it staying the same. It goes up from 18,
Yeah, from 18.
but from this year's budget
Mhm.
to 2020, it's the same, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I'm going to have to ask these questions because I get really confused easily.
Is 604 pay what the old Kelly pay, or is not related to that?
It could be. In other communities, Kelly days, instead of paying for firefighters, they give them that time off. So firefighters don't work a 40-hour work week. They're allowed to work more under the law, but they're also capped at 216 hours in a 28-day cycle. So anything above that, they have to be paid overtime.
216 hours in a 28-day cycle.
Yeah.
Wow.
who keeps that book? Who?
We do in the fire department.
Wow. It's probably one of the most complex pay systems. Railroad pay probably used to be more complex.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's federal law, so.
Okay, let's move on.
All right, so capital improvement projects, we also have a 40-year capital improvement plan in the fire department. One of the things we really wanted to do is space out purchases of large capital equipment. We didn't want to have to, buy 3 fire trucks in 1 year. We want to try to space that out. In the case where we bought 2 in 1 year, it's because we literally had to, because the trucks were falling apart, they were unreliable. Every single fire truck we had broke down while fighting fire, so we had to do that. But again, we are trying to spread these costs out because we do not want Plymouth Township to 20 years from now be in the exact same scenario where they have to buy 3 fire trucks in 1 year.
So this 25-year-old generator,
This 25-year-old, it needs a lot of service work, including replacing the entire exhaust system. I am putting it in the budget as a replacement, but I am not telling you right now that we plan on replacing it. We are waiting for the service tech to come back and give us a
I'd like to see
real
that.
big dig into it to determine what is going to be the best cost analysis.
Because it doesn't get used very often, so it corroded, is what happened.
It corrodes, it runs every week, and it's checked every week, but yes, it corroded, and there's numerous problems. This generator is the oldest in the township, so
Is it running on natural gas?
this is running on natural gas. It was converted for propane for the Y2K scare, if you remember back in 1999. So it can run
converted
both.
From diesel or from propane?
No, it can do natural gas or propane.
So this is a whole building generator in case of electric power outages,
That is correct.
which happen so often in this township that I can see why we would need that.
The next big item is to replace the outdoor
what
lights.
happens, let me ask a question about
Yes,
that,
sir.
though. What happens if a fire station loses power?
So-
What's the impact? Because phones will still work, right?
Not in our system. The
Phones don't work?
The phones don't work. The radio in the building doesn't work.
The radio doesn't work?
The bay doors can't open.
Oh,
We can't even open the bay doors. And the doors are so heavy now, even two guys out there can't lift them with their own hands. So that's the big thing. The other thing is, all the, we have fridges and all that, and we want to, keep that stuff going, just like you would in your own home.
but that's not life safety. That's just convenience, but being able to open the door is definitely.
Yeah.
Are you repairing that one bollard that has been knocked over on the front of station?
Replace outdoor lights at Station 3 with LED lights. It finally fell down completely. It is sitting inside of Station 3. We took it out the other day. Yes, that is one of the things we've been waiting on getting replaced. We've replaced all of the inside lights in the bays with LEDs, but we haven't done the outside yet. I know Mark Lewis is working on doing that around the township.
So can firefighters do any of this work when any of the stuff around the station? I mean, they can't replace a generator, obviously, but any of the stuff around the station when they
Every day.
have downtime?
Every day we paint the base. We paint inside the stations. We paint on the trucks. We replace the trucks. We do our own oil changes of equipment on the trucks. We sharpen the axes. All of the equipment on that truck is checked and maintained by our own firefighters each and every day. And they have a checklist that they have to go through. They have a daily checklist, a weekly checklist, and a monthly checklist, all with different things.
And they do painting as well? Is that what you said?
What's
Paint?
that?
Did you say paint?
Yeah, we paint like the lines on the floor. We'll paint we used to paint the tire rims all the time until we went to stainless steel, or not stainless steel, aluminum. The old steel rims, we had to paint those. I used to paint those 3 times a year. But yeah, the axes, we have to paint the axes. A lot of the equipment inside, we will degrease it, clean it, paint it so it's ready for whatever it has to do. Station number 2, we put in another toilet and we made some changes to it, but that building was built in 1974. That is the original tile floor, and it has warped up because we were not there for 5 years. And that, I'm guessing the building not being conditioned caused that tile floor to warp up, and the tile is chipping out from it. We also have one of those urinals in that building that goes into the floor that needs to be replaced. It's disgusting. It was put in there in 1974. That we have to replace those this year. We're hoping to use, to grind down the floor and put like a paint on it and like have an epoxied concrete floor in there. We've done that in the bathroom, yes. We've done that in the bathroom at Station 1 and in the kitchen of Station 1, and we're very happy with the results.
You mean you took out the tile in Station 1?
Yep.
Already?
Yes. It was, there was infiltration through the doors of water that got under the tiles, and they all started coming up.
Chief, I think I saw it here in the budget, but obviously our former fire engines required a lot of annual maintenance.
Yes.
Substantial. So what's your estimated maintenance budget for vehicles and equipment going forward?
It was in the previous slide. It is going down. We're not jumping it down drastically because we are still operating the 89 right now through the rest of the year. And we're operating a 92 that we just put $10,000 in replacing the transmission. And that truck is still going to be in service here in Plymouth Township for at least the next 5 to 6 years. And then with the exception of the truck we just bought, the newest truck is a 2000, and that truck is 20 years old now. So while our costs are definitely going to go down, we didn't drop them drastically yet in the budget because we don't know what's going to happen next. Station number 2, we need to purchase new lockers. We moved lockers from Station 1 to Station 2 when we opened it, but when we added the Safer Grant firefighters, we had to move them back. So we need to add lockers for Station 2. The hydrant valves, these are the valves that we put on the fire hydrants to open and close them. They're over 30 years old, they're broken, they're super duper heavy. We need to replace those. These are a cost of the entire fleet for all of our trucks is about $4,500 to replace those.
You're replacing them with plastic versions?
No, we are replacing them with a cast aluminum version versus the steel they're made out of now. Those are big, heavy pieces of equipment. The plastic ones don't last. Additional storage cabinets. We have some unused space in Fire Station 1 leading out towards, there's a man door leading out towards CVS. There's a hallway. We are repurposing that for storage. As you guys all know, no building has ever built with enough storage. We've been in this building now since 2006, so we need some additional storage.
We've got surplus space in this building. Just something to think about.
Okay. The show flow devices for measuring flow. These are devices that go on the end of the hose. We use them for training so that firefighters can see exactly how much water is being pushed out, how many kinks and stuff changes that. These are going to be a great training tool for our fire department. We have not had them for numerous years, and the manufacturers haven't made a good digital version until now. And now there's multiple types from multiple manufacturers, so now we feel that it's a good investment, especially with so many young, brand new firefighters, to show them, here's a hose with this style nozzle, and here's the difference of water it puts out versus another.
What's the expenditure?
The expenditure for a show flow device is about $1,000 a piece. We're going to buy 2. We're also going to replace some obsolete equipment. I know, Trustee Kermey, I've already showed you that fan. These are battery-operated fans. Most of our fire trucks have gas-powered fans on them that we have to change the oil. We have a lot of maintenance. We have to buy fuel. We don't buy just the normal fuel that our DPW provides. We have to buy special high-octane fuel to run those motors. So by changing to electric fans, which are now more than adequate for the job, we can just buy off-the-shelf DeWalt batteries to power these. And they're great for our fires. They also have a plug, so we can plug them into 120, so we can plug them in the generators on our fire trucks if the batteries were to run out. So again, another much better piece of equipment, much lighter, much easier to maneuver than what we've had. And it takes up less space on the truck, which allows us to save on the cost of the truck. Portable scene lights, water rescue suits, lifting devices for larger patients. You see that in the corner there? That's we have some people in the township who are quite large, and we have to pick them up off the ground. So these Bender lifts are about $500 a piece. We're going to purchase 4, 1 for each ambulance. And then you also see a photograph of a piercing nozzle. That is a specialized tool that is great for car fires, that is great for piercing through things really quickly to get water to the seat of the fire as fast as possible. Those are about $1,200 a piece.
So through metal or glass or what?
Yep, through metal. Well, glass would just shatter, but through metal, through the walls of a house. There's especially great for basement fires where there's a fire in the basement. You can just punch it through the floor, hit the fire with water while your firefighters then travel down the stairs, and they have that water curtain at the top of the stairs protecting the stairwell so they can't fall into the fire and die. Some departments have made that standard practice.
Without getting too detailed, how does it pierce? What is it? What's the function? Is it an explosive thing on the end?
It's just a sharp edge on the end, and the other side you hit with a big, heavy mallet. A sledgehammer. About 2 hits will put it through just about anything, including brick.
Water rescue. How many suits are you purchasing, and what's the expenditure?
The Mustang water rescue suits that we have are 12 years old. They're at a cost of $980 a piece. We put one on each one of our ambulances so that they're positioned all throughout the township. So about $3,000 with another $400 in new life vests, rescue rope, bags to hold it.
What is wrong with the current equipment?
It leaks.
Other than being, it leaks, okay.
It leaks. So in the wintertime, when you go in the water, you get wet and you freeze.
What water?
Phoenix Lake, some of these little ponds, dogs will run out in the ice, they'll crash through, we'll go out. We used to have a policy where we didn't rescue dogs. That blew up in our face because then residents were going on the ice to rescue their dogs, and then we would have to rescue the residents. So we just will rescue your dog. Detention ponds, yes, absolutely. You'd be amazed at.
Okay. Keep going.
All right, so the Insurance Service Offices, we are scheduled for Q1 of 2020 for our review. They've already contacted me. They've already sent me some initial documentation. We were last had our review in 2014. At that time, Plymouth scored a 5/5X. The 5X designation references areas of the community that are not hydranted. Specifically, in our case, Hines Park, the expressways, and way out to the west. Since that time, we've reopened Fire Station 2. We've increased our staffing. We've updated our obsolete vehicles and equipment. We've improved our dispatch center, which also gives us points, and we've improved our hydrant system. I'm not sure. I know there were some problems with the water tower. Trustee Kermy and Trustee Dorshevitz, you can help me with this. When it was first installed, there was a valving issue.
Yeah.
And that was around 2014, 2013, right?
Yep.
So I don't know if we got full points then. I'm hoping we do now for our water system.
What kind of issue was that?
A valve.
Yeah, when they put the tower up, there was a problem with the valve, or the valve wasn't installed, and so the tower couldn't fill, and it wasn't giving us the value that we wanted. So I don't know if the previous review of that gave us full points, but I'm hoping that we get that now because we've made those improvements.
Do you offhand know the rankings for Northville, Canton, and, say, Livonia?
Don't guess. Send it to us an email.
No, let me answer the questions, okay?
Canton is also a 5/5X, but they hope to increase theirs soon. I know the city of Northville and the city of Plymouth and the city, or in the township of Northville, all went down recently. They're all better than us. I did provide the board a document last year with all those on it.
I think, though, we probably need to be careful because I'm hearing an expectation that people's insurance costs are going to go down, and that was not true in 2014.
Our score went up in 2014.
No, you said
up
so
bad.
So remember,
prior when the scores went up, that did not happen.
Yes, score going up is bad.
Well, whichever way, when it improved, the homeowners insurance did not come down.
Our rating has not improved since sometime before 1999. We were a 5X in 1999 as well. So we have not seen an improvement in that in well over 20 years.
I'm just saying we have to be careful about that because this board's already created.
I think I've qualified that several times tonight, that we are exploring this and that there are no guarantees, but we certainly have an obligation for our taxpayers to look into this.
But what it does provide for us is an outside agency coming in and reviewing our practices and telling us whether what we're doing is good or bad. And I think that is the best value of it. On top of the fact that if your insurance company subscribes to ISO, and if your insurance company deems that what they've seen has been a great improvement, they may lower your costs. Again, I can't predict the future.
Yeah, and I get all that. I want to be careful not to link the two because I have heard that feedback. You know, we're paying more taxes. Why didn't my homeowner's insurance go down?
You can refer those calls to me next time, Bob.
So again, thank you for your time. If you have any other questions, this is a structure fire that happened this year on General Drive, not too far from here.
What
Garage fire.
All garage.
Yeah, I have a question. Are you going to provide us with a written copy of this or put it in next week's board packet?
I will. Yeah, I talked to the deputy clerk before I left for Maryland and informed her that, there's no way I can get this done in the time allotted. I will email you
It
all
was a
a
yes
copy
or no
of this
question.
tonight.
Well, could you hand write in or the dollar amount of
Right,
expenditures?
exactly.
Because it's too much Where's Waldo.
Yeah, no, I'll provide another document with all that in it. I didn't want that to be part of
Yeah.
this overview.
That's fine. And I'm not clear on what you do have in the budget and what you
Sorry, say that again.
don't have in. These grants, for example, and then there was one or two items that you may come back to us for if you don't get a grant or something, and I'm not clear on that. If you can specify all that, that'd be great.
Yeah, the match for the grants wasn't initially in there because this budget was created, you saw it, what was the date it came out? September
I'm
1st?
not being critical.
Okay.
I'm just asking for information.
Yep.
And before we leave the topic, I'd like to go back to the police department real quick.
Sure.
So if we're looking at total budget numbers, I just want to make sure I got this straight.
What page are you going to?
So law enforcement is, general fund is on page, the total is on page 7 of 10. Right? Page 7.
It looks like
Yeah, the
this.
budget
It's
report.
the-
You don't have that?
document.
Okay. Well, maybe we can just talk about it up here. So if I understand these numbers, the current law enforcement amended 2019 budget is 4,386,562.76.
Department 305. Yep. I see it. Right in the middle of the page.
Yeah, top of
Okay,
page
good.
7.
And it's going up to 4,589,040.75. Okay, good.
5%.
Then if we look at communications, 325, the current budget, same page on ours, just down to 325 is 1,750,953.22, right? And that's going down to 1,447,628.92. Right?
Because of equipment
Okay, good.
purchases.
So if I add those,
Look at the line right above that. Right above it. And you'll see all the money that was spent in that new dispatch center.
Yeah.
The 310,800? Is that what you're looking about?
So
We're looking at the 367,000 that was
Yeah.
spent on equipment purchases, and that went down significantly.
yeah, I'm just
So I think what...
I'm just
if I
trying to get the
may-
numbers
Yeah,
straight, that's all.
If I may,
Yeah.
I think, because I struggle with the same thing, because there's kind of two elements to the budget. One is run rate, and the second is the variables that are caused by equipment purchases, things like that. I'm trying to understand run rate.
You're including pensions as part of run rate?
Yeah, run rate.
I mean,
What it
that's
costs.
110,000.
Yeah, I mean,
based on that.
so in general, and I like the way Chief Phillips put that up or stressed that point in his budget presentation, because 80% of this budget, right, is just recurring. It's all based upon people. And there's not much that the department heads can add to that equation, right? The folks in the accounting department have this massive spreadsheet that has every single person and what their salary is and what their salary increase is and what the Social Security is going to be and what their health care benefits is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. And that encompasses 80% of all these line items. The stuff that varies, and I'll talk about this right now because I gave you 3 handouts to help you kind of decipher through the detail in this budget. The first one is labeled on top. It's the general fund revenue projections. So this is a summary version, and instead of showing revenue by department, does everybody see it? Yeah. Okay. Instead of showing revenue department by department, the way I've depicted it here is showing it in 3 categories: recurring revenue, fees for service, and then non-recurring revenue. So I think that'll answer part of your question, Bob, in terms of what's recurring and what do we get in terms of grants, et cetera. The second document that I provided in that packet at the top is, it's called Miscellaneous Notes Version 4. It's just a one-page document. These are all the one-time special events that are happening this year, like selling off land, like the grants, like writing off the Hilltop loan, like the contribution to the OPEB trust, like putting money aside for the building fund. So there's a lot of these one-time financial events that are taking place that are described here in the budget. And then the third and final document is all that other stuff. All the capital requests for every single department is highlighted here in this capital improvement equipment request. And we've gone through well over half of those today, between the fire and between the police.
So these are capital requests that are in the proposed budget.
They're in the budget.
In
Correct.
this 10 or 12-page document.
Correct.
Are we going to be able to get the full-time equivalent chart by department? So we know, we haven't had it in a couple of years. We should really take a look at that, because I see we're adding headcount.
Chart, are you talking about the employee personnel chart?
Well, it's a chart that gives the full-time equivalent.
Breakdown by
Right,
department of how many people.
I
are
can
there.
kind of picture it in my head, but I haven't seen one in a long
The
time.
organizational, like the organizational
Been a
chart.
while.
No, it's not an organization chart.
It's just how many people are in the departments, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, and then it, 0.5 for this person. And,
I think the only personnel that's being added that's being requested would be in building, and I think your people have already been budgeted.
Yeah, they've been budgeted. The people in my department were budgeted this year, and there's just going to be increase for services.
Oh, the only thing, and that's in that miscellaneous notes, the headcount, a new headcount request for a building department person, a GIS technician. That's split between general
GIS?
and between general and water and sewer. We've got a part-time person for elections as well as temporary workers for
Well,
elections.
the part-time person's already budgeted for this year.
and you never hired them.
Never hired them, yeah.
So is this elections, is this incremental, 190,000 or total?
Well, it's
It's part four. That's going to be for
You're off.
what we.
You're off.
I'm sorry. That's going to be for all the changes that we have in the election laws, where you're going to see increase in all of the AVs and some increase for people working in the at the precincts.
That will be the focus of our
Our
discussion for next Tuesday.
week. Yeah. So you're going to have a lot more people in the clerk's office processing absentee ballots that are coming in by the bushel load.
This does not include any salary increases for existing personnel.
No.
Or the finance director position.
No.
And that will all be discussed next week.
Do you have the new payroll person on board?
Part-time, she's
Yeah.
part-time, yeah.
It's part-time, yeah, but it was only like for a few months this year. This is a full-time.
So this is intended to be
Well, it's not
is
incremental. It's not
This page?
incremental.
No? Okay. Not
Ju-
incremental. All right. Well, we can talk about that next
Well, I'd have to go line item by line item, but that 21,000, that's what we pay the part-time payroll person. That's what their entire salary would be for next year. We did pay some of that this year, so it's not all incremental.
So GIS technician, I still think we need to have some backup on why we don't have a full-timer or whatever.
We will be discussing that. We have budget discussions on September
Well, that's what
24th,
I'm mentioning.
October
So
8th,
that way we're ready with
October
data.
22nd, and November 12th.
Speaking of data, I just want to close the loop with the police folks. So I've done some really careful math here.
You said you weren't good at
Are you
math.
Well,
dangerous?
I know, but I've taken time while you've been
All right,
talking about
all right.
this.
Here we go.
All right.
I think I see a net $100,000 decrease in those two overall budget items.
That's what we said.
You mean
305
fire
and 325.
and
No,
police?
no, police, just police.
Just police.
But police and dispatch. If I take a $203,000 increase in 305 and I net it against a 303 decrease in 325, I get $100,000 less next year, just this budget, not talking about all the other stuff. Am I right?
Well, I'd have to defer to Treasurer
Yeah,
Clinton on
it's a
that
yes or no
because
question.
We were
It's a math question.
Right.
Uh,
And that's why I'm a
I didn't
cop,
hear
not
it, so I'll
an
flip a coin.
That's my fault. I will show you.
So if this goes down 203,000, I'm sorry, if this goes up 203, Department 305,
Okay.
that goes up 203,000.
Okay,
And this 325 goes down 303,000,
Okay.
203 and 303.
Yeah.
Then the net is $100,000 less in next year's budget.
yes.
I can do math. Thank you.
2 minus 3 is -1. Well done.
There you go. Yeah.
All right, anything else on the police and fire budgets? Hearing none,
Save money.
we're going to move on to item D, supervisor and trustee comments. September 24th is our next meeting, a week from today. We will have on the agenda the EMS contract with HVA, budget adjustments, and Cindy Kushner will be here for that. Budget discussion will be focusing on clerk and elections and some general government. We have the annual millage approval, renewal, that thing. Andover Lakes, bless you, SAD Engineering, and they've got more than enough signatures for that.
Which SAD?
Andover Lakes. And then we have 2 storm drain agreements, should be pretty simple, one for Signet on General Drive, and one for the Plymouth Park and Eats, which I think is that the Schoolcraft? That's the
Food
truck,
trucks.
the food truck emporium there. And that'll be it. October 8th, right now, we're just looking at more budget. We're going to move the public hearing for the budget, it looks like, Mark, Kevin. I think we're going to move that to November 12th because we need to do the public hearing and the approval in the same night. It's my understanding. No. So we could do the public hearing on October.
You can't change it, though.
I did have a discussion with Clerk Vorva and Trustee Kermy last week about the effects of changing the budget after the public hearing. Section 4, and I was incorrect in what I said last week, I apologize for that. Section 4 of the Budget Hearings of Local Governments Act provides that changes made in its budget by the governing body of a local unit subsequent to such public hearing shall not affect the validity of such budget. Notwithstanding that, it would appear, or it would be intuitive to believe that the more substantive changes to a budget after the public hearing, the greater the tenuous nature of the budget itself.
Why don't we just do it in the same night? Let's do it the same night. So we'll do the public hearing on November 12th, and we'll do approval that night as well.
Can we shoot to have a finance director by that November 12th day? I mean, we're talking 2 months. I mean, it's taken you a long time to get this far. I'm still looking for this person, so.
Okay, those are.
No.
Well,
This
these
is
are-
not as available.
Okay, so those are we're under Heise's comment period right now, and I will pass it over. I'm done, so I'll pass it over to Bob.
Good here.
All right, let's go back to mine. It's not as available. We need a finance director. And November 12th is the public hearing. It's 2 months away. I mean, I don't think it's out of line to have a finance director within 2 months.
Well, I mean, you can, if you can hire any number of people. I mean, in fact, I got one person who worked in the hotel industry who applied for the job. No finance background, but he was a manager. So we've got people who are applying who don't have the requisite background to do this job. We're going to be speaking with someone, both Clinton and I hope to be speaking with someone on Friday that possibly could fit the bill.
Have we added the job description to the things that Trustee Dorshevitz and I that said Indeed, LinkedIn, places that we did not have
Well, someone has already put all of our job descriptions on LinkedIn.
Somebody had?
Somebody did.
Yeah.
Wasn't me, wasn't HR, and it was done a couple days ago at 1:30 in the morning.
So is that good? That's good, isn't it?
No, it's not good. It should have come through my office because that costs us money to advertise on LinkedIn.
I think
It
it's free,
does.
isn't it?
It's not.
No.
It's
No.
not. It's not.
Really?
Yeah, you got that.
So next time, anybody
Somebody
does
has-
that, they need to come through my office, not do it on their
Who
own.
did that?
Don't know.
Well, somebody had to pay the bill.
You got
Yeah.
Somebody paid it
to
out of
post a
pocket.
job opening on LinkedIn, you have to pay for that?
It used to be, you didn't
I didn't know
have
that.
You pay, yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to pay.
The employers pay to be on LinkedIn.
It wasn't
Pay
me.
fees.
Okay, anything else, Gary? Thank you.
Oh,
Jerry?
but what can
I'm good.
happen is some of the concentrators will put, some of the aggregator job sites will pull those, they'll mine them off of websites, and they'll put them on LinkedIn, but those are not actually the township posting them. That happens automatically with the.
So there's
when
an
they post it.
algorithm.
So someone's spider webbing it off of
Yeah.
the
Recruiting for-
MML and off the
Yeah.
other governmental sites? Okay.
Yeah, could be.
That's what they do with real estate
Would be
listings
nice
too.
to
It,
know.
it resulted in us getting a lot of irrelevant applications.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice to know who did.
So anyway, anything else, Jerry?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Mark Lynn.
I already went through what the handouts that I gave you. The only other thing is, just to inform you, we finished our summer tax cycle. We had a very successful summer tax cycle. We collected, and understand that these things are not technically due until the end of February before they go to Lincoln, but we've already collected 96% of the summer taxes.
Bills or dollars?
Both, they're basically the same. Yeah, I sent out 11,200 tax bills. We collected 10,800 of them. Over $50 million flowed through this place between July, August, and early September. So went off without a hitch, went real smooth. So we had a very
Thank you.
successful.
Jack. Chuck.
Park, some maintenance items. Should I talk to you about, I think some of them can be done this year, just like, for example, painting the fascia boards that we put on this winter.
Yeah.
And maybe some drainage things, and some of it may be budget related. And also, I took a look at our old play structure. We're kind of neglecting it, so I want to kind of, I don't want to tear it down, so when in the budget, we need to think about something to do there.
Still getting a lot of use?
The community doesn't want it
I'd
torn
hate
down.
to see it torn down.
Well,
My
We
kids
need
used
to
it a
work on
lot.
it, so.
Okay, well,
I'll
I would encourage you to come up with some ideas on how we can do that. And I'm not trying to be flippant.
Yeah.
I just want to know
We're going to have to spend some money.
what solutions are out there to preserve a 25-year-old wooden structure.
Okay. There's
I'm-
ways to do it.
Oh, okay. I'm all ears. I'd love to hear it. Okay.
That light keeps blink. It's been doing that for. There's a light outside that blinks on and off. Dave Hack.
Is it
somebody
outside?
used to look at- Yeah, that's outdoors.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll
He's
let
been doing it for a year or two.
we'll let Dave Hack know. That requires we're gonna have to bring people from the outside to go up on a
It's
ladder. We don't want Dave doing that.
Just wait for the ladder truck.
There you go.
That's right.
Good training for
I
the
need
ladder.
to borrow that to clean out my gutters.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No.
All right. General public at this point, limited to 3 minutes. Hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr.
I
Heitman.
move we adjourn
Mr. Heitman
9:29.
motions to adjourn, and is there a second? Second by Clerk Vorva. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.